So, on to the main event. Angelo Ross is joining us tonight. And besides his many titles, hats, and qualifications, you might have heard of this little podcast called The Fall Line with Chaos and Company that he happens to be the co-host of with Dave Capron. I'd imagine many of you have heard of it by now, but if not, I encourage you to check it out. They have a growing library of some great interviews and discussions with some legends from around the industry. I was just starting to listen to the PSIA-AASI one you guys just put up uh, before tonight, but it's available in all the fun places you find podcasts like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. And I also just wanted to highlight this little throwback to December 2013 when Angelo himself decided this baby-faced punk was somehow qualified to teach skiing. So if you need someone to blame for getting stuck listening to my rambling, he might be a good target. But thankfully for all of you, my rambling is done for tonight. And so, Angelo, the floor is yours, my friend.
Well, thanks, Brandon. I should mention that the fellow we can blame for my career is on this call too, and that's your dad, Kevin Bach, hired me at Seven Springs back in the day, 100 years ago, I think, right, Kevin?
I think you said 1990. I was still
Yeah.
pooping yellow then.
Yeah. Yeah, 1990. But anyway, thanks everybody for coming. I will second Brandon's request for cameras. It is definitely much easier to present to faces than white text in black boxes. So if you're able and it's appropriate and you don't mind, I would appreciate it. It'll make it a little bit more interactive. And I want to thank Brandon for inviting me. And I think there's so much room in the industry for programs like this. It just informs more people, which I don't think can ever be a bad thing. So thanks for doing this, Brandon. I know how much work it is to put together programs like this, but it does pay off, and it makes it all better. Like Rogan says, a rising tide lifts all boats. So anytime any of us do things to make it better, it just definitely helps everyone. So without further ado, I'll jump right in. Full disclosure, I don't know exactly how long this is going to take, because as I told Brandon a little bit ago, I just finished it. It's been a crazy couple of days, so I'm doing it on the fly here. But are you able to see my screen? Okay, and do you just see the PowerPoint? Like, is that all you see right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before I start though, would it be cool if you would you all mind getting in the chat and just putting your primary discipline so I can see that? Really just curiosity, but it might also help me craft some language further down the road, if you don't mind. Here we go. Seeing them pour in a lot of alpine. Okay, I'll keep looking at that as you put them in there. All right, we have a snowboarder. That's cool. Good. Looks like mostly alpine. Anyway, let's get started. So Brandon and I spoke a few weeks ago, and I agreed to come on. I was happy to agree to come on, and then he said, "Well, what do you want to talk about?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And this title just popped into my head, and I was like, "Let's do one on expressing yourself." And as I developed the program, and as I thought about it more, I thought, like, why did this pop into my head? Why was this the first thing? And I think what happened was it's based on just things that I've experienced in my 34-ish years as a ski and snowboard instructor. As I started to brainstorm ideas and things appeared on the paper. I saw a theme develop, and it was as I look back over those years, just ideas and things people have said to me and things I've witnessed that have stuck with me through those years. So I thought, well, there must be like merit to these. So I'll build a presentation based on the list. And I'll show you that list in a moment, but I do want to refer to the subtitle there, Conversation about Leveraging Curriculum. Please don't hesitate to put questions or comments in the chat as we're rolling. I'm happy to stop my flow to address something relevant. And then, you know, as Brandon said, if you have questions or comments at the end, that would be great also. So without further ado, these are the catalysts that led to this topic. So like I said, it's a collection of statements, and it's just things I've witnessed and experienced, vibes I've picked up on, trends that I've noticed in skiing with different groups. I ski with mostly ski instructors. This season I have been skiing quite a bit with ski patrollers, and I've done that for years. I am a patroller. And I'm involved in some Eastern region program development regarding like patroller skiing skills and toboggan skills. So a lot of what I hear comes from patrollers, and it's interesting. It's a different culture from what we as ski instructors experience. So anyway, that's where this list came from. And if your camera is on and these are things that you have heard or maybe even said, or you've heard other people say, can I get a thumbs up just for some validation that like I'm not totally in the weeds when it comes to this topic? I ask folks all the time, like in a clinic, because we are student centered, right? Our mission is to give the people what they want. That's our job. And so this just happened the other day. What day is today? Today is Wednesday. On Sunday, I skied with ski patrollers at a local mountain, and I had a group of them in front of me, and I said, what do you guys want to work on? Like, what can I help you with? It's your time. And the first statement I heard was this one: tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I thought, and I leaned over on the chair and I said, oh, like, who has been delivering you this like metaphysical beating that the first thing out of your mouth is you want me to tell you what you're doing wrong? Like, is that how low we've come? Anyway, I've heard this one too. Have you ever heard this one? I hear this in the locker room sometimes. I don't believe in what PSIA, usually it ends there, but sometimes AASI, I don't believe in what they say. And my thought is like why not? What is it specifically that you don't believe? I've heard this one. What's the new buzzword this year? Like, we just like randomly change things. I don't know, for the sake of changing them, you know, which I can assure you isn't the case, but I do hear this quite a lot. So that sentiment is out there. This is something that I see, and I suspect you all see it too. There's a real tendency toward a command style of instruction, and I call it chest puffery. And I see this a lot from patrollers, but I see it a lot from ski instructors too. And my inclination, my gut tells me that this occurs when someone is in a situation where they like deep down inside, they don't feel like they know what they're saying. It might be a little bit of imposter syndrome. And one of the defense mechanisms we employ with that is we tend to get bigger and louder when we're uncomfortable. You know, some people get flight and fright, right? Like some people cower and get shy, and some people get bigger and stick their chest out. But I see quite a lot of this, as opposed to like cooperative coaching partnerships, which is, you know, clearly a higher level type of coaching. I see this quite a bit. I see a real deficit in our association in particular of self-coaching. I don't see a lot of pros involved in the process of self-coaching. And what I mean by that specifically, just for clarification, is self-coaching is, you know, you would hear an idea from a coach, you would go off on your own and try these things until you had a new experience. And then you form some ideas about that experience, you reflect on it, but then you go back to your coach and for validation. Like, hey, watch what I'm doing. This is what I've been trying. can you tell me if this is what's going on? And you check in with that coach. But what I see more of, I called at the end of that statement, this external salvation. And I originally put the word validation in there, but I changed it to salvation because it's almost like I watch these in every, I'm assuming, in most other scenarios in these folks' lives, like they're fully capable, competent adults. They contribute to society, they pay their taxes, they have professional jobs. But when it comes to being on the ski hill, you have that moment. I had the moment. I think a lot of people do, where you join a staff and you think you're pretty good, right? And then you realize pretty quickly how much there is to know about snow sports instruction. And then it's like this, oh my God moment. Like, I have no idea what's going on. I thought I was good. I showed up. These guys are clearly good. That happens a lot. And I watch it shut people down, to the point where to the point where they don't self-coach, to the point where they think the answer lies within some other person. And they start to, in many cases, attach their personal worth to that feeling. And worst case scenario, and I've seen this, Kevin, I bet you've seen this, people who are unsuccessful at an exam, certification exam, just quit ski teaching. That's it. And I think that's a real shame, but I think it's attached to this phenomenon where autonomy isn't being developed from the ground up, self-expression isn't being nurtured from the ground up, and we create these like chasms and schisms within our ranks where we're not fulfilling people's wants and needs, and it plays out like that. It plays out like, oh my God, I wasn't successful. I can't do this. I'm a failure and I'm done. Has anybody seen that? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yes? Yeah, okay. Not the only one.
And more than skiing.
Yes, more than skiing. True. Agreed, Kevin. This is something I see quite a bit. I call it the locker room level. Like this is in individual resorts. When I hear people discuss snow sports, whether it's performance or teaching, there's a real rigidity. This is how you do it. This is the right way. Like there's one right way to do any of this. Versus what I see at different tiers within our ranks. And I jumped to the national team level because that's like the other end of that. And I work with the team quite a bit. And I don't see really rigidity of thought or chest puffery when I work with people at that level. There's much more of a flexibility. There's much more of an open-mindedness. And I attribute that rigidity to the same phenomenon as the chest puffery. Like, a little bit of knowledge is a dangerous thing. So we have a tendency to get really protective of what we know, which I get, but at the expense of being open-minded. So I've seen that through the years. I see this from patrollers a lot. This bias toward carving. And when I ask patrollers what they're working on, very, very often they say, wow, carving. And I'll like, why are you working on that? And then, well, because my trainer told me to, but again, it's that giving up of autonomy. It's that lack of self-coaching. And then this underlying belief that somehow carving is better than like skidding, for example. But I mean, you all know, I'm preaching to the choir here. If you're in the trees, or if you're in the bumps, or if you're on a steep with consequences, carving is probably not going to be your first choice of tactic. Like if you don't have a skid in those situations, it can be a bad day. And if you watch the World Cup, watch the top half of every turn is a skid. Like they're skidding until they eagle eye the target, and then they lock the edges in, and there it goes, like a straight line, then another skid. It's just a valuable tactic. But within the ranks of professional skiers, there's often this belief that carving is somehow this evolved form of skiing. and skidding is a lesser form. So I've seen that quite a bit. This is related. Belief that more edge is better than less edge. And coming from a small icy mountain in southwestern Pennsylvania, like I understand the concept, that I understand why folks believe in high early edge angles, because they think, well, I'm going to get on this edge, I'll be able to control my speed on ice. But the result is very often the opposite of that, which is like, you know, the equivalent of driving in your car, hitting an icy patch and then jamming on the brakes, and you just start to spin. Same thing happens on skis and snowboards, you know, if you don't regulate lower edge angles. I hear this all the time. When I overhear lessons from ski instructors, I hear a lot about ankles, and I don't hear anything about the big muscle groups. I don't hear about quadriceps. I don't hear about hamstrings. I've never heard about glutes. I don't hear about hip flexors, glute medius, longitudinal abs, lateral obliques. Like these big ham hocks that we have attached to the middle of our body are essentially ignored in the vernacular at the expense of ankles. You got to flex your ankles. Well, of course you have to flex your ankles, but that's not the end of the story. And, you know, over flexing the ankles can create as many problems as it solves. And I mean, between you and me, like my boots fit, so it is virtually impossible for me to take my shin off of the tongue of my boot. Like if my shin disconnects from the tongue of my boot, I've got bigger problems than a bad ski turn because my boots fit. And I think that's true for a lot of us. So we're coaching people to leverage forward on the gear. We put the pivot point in front of the binding. We create tail wash, all just by the language we use, and ignoring these big central core muscles that actually do most of the work when we're moving down the hill. I see quite a bit of this. I see folks motivated by external things rather than internal things. And I mean, we've all heard about pin chasers, and I totally get it. Like I was the same exact way when my pins was bronze. I wanted to trade it in, you know, because that one was better. I totally get the concept of it. And now that pay is attached to certification at most of the resorts where we work, I fully understand wanting to level up. But what doesn't occur, like I'm drawing a blank on the word. What doesn't occur at the same rate is the desire to actually understand the material. You know, in other words, people rush toward the pin without allowing the time for development. And that creates a whole host of problems. I see this, too few members in the pipeline. And what I mean by that is like, you know, we need more examiners. We need bigger turnouts at national team tryouts. We need more level 2s. We need more people attending more than just the minimum requirement of a biannual 2-day update. And I tried to grab that data today from one of the regional offices, but I did it too late. But I got an anecdotal response from somebody in member services when I asked the question, what percentage of our membership is just doing an update every other year to maintain their certification? Like who's doing the minimal amount? And the response I got was probably somewhere around 60%. So about 60% of our membership doing the bare minimum. And I'm not trying to make that sound judgmental. I understand people are busy. I understand for most people it's a weekend job. I understand the pay isn't the thing that brings most people to the job. Like I get all that. People have kids, people are paying for, I totally get it. And I'm not trying to make it sound judgmental, but as a teacher, like I've been a career teacher, public school, college level, ski teaching for 34 years. Doing the bare minimum is well, I mean, it's the bare minimum, you know, like I feel like we could probably be doing more as an organization. And that is minimal participation by so much of the membership. And what I would like to see is that grow. You know, like, I don't think there would be any greater indicator of our success as an organization than our membership doing more than they had to do because the product was so good. Like, that would be excellent, you know. So anyway, my bold statement at the end, after looking at all those things that have been floating around in my head for years, is there's work to be done toward autonomy as both teachers and learners within our membership. And that's inclusive of everybody, all of us on this call, and the 34,000 of us across the country. And just FYI, 2 days ago, we broke the 34,000 mark for the first time. We have more members in our association than we've ever had in our history. So that's notable, you know. Any questions or comments about this? I wanted you to understand what was in the background of my brain as I put this presentation together. And I'm happy to entertain questions or comments about that list. Brandon, anything in the chat about that?
I think there's a lot of head nodding and thumbs up and agreements going on in the chat.
Okay.
I think a lot of us have heard, I think, a lot of these points, and it's pretty interesting.
Well, okay, I'm glad, because yeah, for me to come on here and make a whole bunch of fiction up wouldn't be good. These are things I've seen. Let me get rolling here. All right, so let's talk about the notion of self-expression just generally. And I'm not trying to insult your intelligence, but it seemed like a good ground floor. What is self-expression? So Oxford defines it thusly: expression of one's feelings, thoughts, or ideas, especially in writing, art, music, or dance. And I personally include teaching in the art category. I think of teaching as more art than science, although there is science involved. I think to get truly creative and meet people where they are, teaching has to be artful. Otherwise, we lose folks. So that's what Oxford has to say about it. Merriam-Webster, similarly, expression of your personality and the assertion of your individual traits, right? So we're all on board with that. And a couple other relevant terms that dawned on me and that I came across as I was researching some ideas. This notion of agency. I have a friend who's a psychiatrist and a ski patroller at Seven Springs Resort, and he uses the term agency a lot when he is talking about developing his own autonomy. He says, I want to have agency as a skier and agency as a teacher. And so I like the word. And it defines similarly to autonomy and expressing yourself, you know, the capacity, condition, or state of acting or exerting power. And then the follow-up to that from the Pattison Professional Counseling and Meditation Center, I found this online and just really liked the notion of it, just this sense of control that you feel in your life. And when I read that and thought about the chest puffery, it was like, oh, there's a direct connection there. If the chest puffery results from a feeling of insecurity, then those folks don't feel control and therefore don't feel agency as teachers. So to me, it was a direct connection between those concepts: your capacity to influence your own thoughts and behavior, have faith in your ability to handle a wide range of tasks and situations, help you to be psychologically stable, yet flexible. There's the flexibility as opposed to the rigidity in the face of conflict or change. And conflict and change are things that we experience in Lessons on the Hill. You know, usually not fist fight levels of conflict, but I mean, who's had, show of hands, who's had a kid that didn't want to be there? Conflict, right? Who had a kid that wanted to go down this slope and you wanted to go down that slope? Conflict, right? And change. Things change throughout the lesson. The conditions change, people's goals change, like people get tired, their physiology changes, and our ability to adapt to that reflects on our agency as coaches. And then lastly, there's autonomy, quality or state of being self-governing, self-directing freedom, and especially moral independence. And I think as we start to dig through our PSIA-AASI's curriculum materials, this idea of freedom and moral independence ties right into what we have going on. So there's that stuff. Any thoughts or questions about any of those terms? Brandon, anything in the chat?
Nothing too much, just some talk about the opportunities to join to get in on PSA clinics.
I'm trying to keep an eye on it, but I have a lot of screens happening here.
You're all good.
Oh, well, one more. Piaget. We love to quote these guys because they're in our manuals, but this idea of autonomy and agency, I think equates to what Piaget said about formal operations. And it's the ability to understand and use symbols and abstractions, systematic thought, theorization. These are the highest things that we can do with our, in terms of cognition and considering multiple possibilities, conceptualization of things like justice, love, freedom, fairness, those notions. And I thought I'd put this proposition out there because the opposite of what we're talking about is, to some degree, if we can't fully express ourselves, it means we have to manage ourselves. And I think that is more close to the world we actually live in. If everybody ran around doing everything they felt like doing, I think the world would be a pretty chaotic place. So when we're confined to social contracts and operating within a system and other people, we have to give up some of that self-expression and basically fit in quite a bit. So if we get a little bit more specific with self-expression, we can say that it's a right. Self-expression is a right until it interferes with somebody else's autonomy or somebody else's agency. And then it becomes a problem. And it can be as minimal as, like, it can just be a little personality rub, or it can go to another extreme. But at some point, and in many ways, we have to manage our desires to express ourselves. Social contracts, either actual or hypothetical agreements among members of an organized society that define limits and rights and duties of each. So that's all heady and whatnot. So I want to take a look at that statement and specifically how it applies to us as instructors of snow sports. So we've got actual agreements. And this is an agreement that most resorts, if not all, in the country, I think NSAA has 340 partner resorts in the country, adhere to the responsibility code. And this can be a legally binding document. This comes up in court cases when some violation occurs, but we have an actual agreement that when you purchase the pass or you purchase the lift ticket, you agree to adhere to, as we should. But I think more often it plays out as a hypothetical agreement, because in my mind, if we asked most participants in snow sports, like if we pulled over a bunch of random people on a Saturday and said, hey, do you know about the responsibility code? I think they would probably say no, or they might say yes, but not be super familiar with it. And despite that fact, they still, I think most people do their best not to run into other people. And so it becomes this hypothetical agreement. And it's because they have a sense of self-preservation. I don't want to run into anything because it's going to damage my person. And they also have a compassion and a generosity that's wired into the species. I don't want to run into that person because I don't want to hurt her or him. So we have these hypothetical agreements that occur. I almost chose a picture of a marathon or a picture of a busy sidewalk in New York City, because I think it's the same thing. Like, you try your best. You're walking through the mall. I'm not going to run into anybody. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to hurt anybody else. I think another way we can customize this to what we do is get rid of that community and its ruler notion and look at students and their teacher. And I think it's interesting to consider, when you look at the social contract, the rights and duties that people have as students and as teachers. So I want to explore that idea a little bit. I don't know if you have something to write on or if you can take a note on your phone or whatever, but if you don't mind taking a few moments just to jot down some thoughts, maybe make 2 columns, teacher on this side, student on this side, rights and duties. If you don't mind jotting a couple of those down, we'll come back to this notion at the end after we run through the program and see what your thoughts are. But I'm going to clam up for a few minutes and give you some space to think, and then I'll pick it back up in a moment. If you have anything in the meantime that you want to stick in the chat, I'll look in there. Well, thanks for the comments. I'm looking at, we have a problem with instructors providing a consistent product for our guests. Doesn't that have to be a priority before self-expression? Just at first glance, I think it depends how you define consistency. Like, does it mean lessons across the resort look the same at any point in time? Or does consistent mean that each instructor is meeting the wants and needs of guests, even though those things may be different? So I think there are a couple different ways to look at that. We can get into that during the Q&A. All right, I'm going to keep on keeping on, and we'll come back to this. So if you want to develop those ideas further down the line, we'll have some time. My screens here. Okay, couple of statements I want you to consider. Take a moment to take that in. Pop another one up there. Anyone need more time on those? If you have your camera on, give me a thumbs up if you're good, and I'll click. Cool, thank you. Last one. Can I get a thumbs up when you're done? Cool. Thank you. So let's look at those same quotes through a filter now and do a little bit of analysis on them. And the filter is this: do these quotes encourage self-expression or conformity? And here's the first one back, and I bolded a couple of words. So if your camera's on and you think that trends more toward self-expression, could I see a thumbs up? And if you think it trends more toward conformity, show me a thumbs down. All right, second one, bolded a couple of words. Is that a self-expression or a conformity? Wes thinks that's a conformity. Brandon thinks that's a self-expression. All right, let's take a look at this. Whoop, take a look at that one. Self-expression or conformity? I've often wondered what Horst's title did to the world of skiing. I had the pleasure of working with Horst a little bit on some projects, and he's feisty one. If you've ever seen him on, he's on Stacy's Tea Talks and whatnot. He's a well-read person and opinionated, you know, and he believes strongly. But I just wonder, people see that title of that book, and without understanding what it really means, that it's a reference to creativity and holism, thinking, oh, this is how you ski. This is the one right way to do it. But that's not what that book is about at all. And it's not what Horst's ideas are about. And lastly, this idea of floral movement patterns, right? Yeah. Yeah. Does anybody want to venture a guess as to where these passages come from? Does anybody know where they come from? There's a chat. A chat popped up. I'm gonna look. One of them, yeah, Richard. One of the bottom one on the screen now comes from the Alpine Technical Manual, and the other three, I'll pop it back just a second, so you can see these other. The other three, these two, and this one, all come from the Teaching Snow Sports Manual. And the reason I put these up here is because I find these all to be very trending towards self-expression. Whatever your background is, you can bring it into this and make it work, you know, whatever your style is. Like, you don't have, I was a school teacher for 20 years. I did 2 decades in public school. There were people in my building, colleagues of mine, who were the type of teachers that would jump up on the desk and wear a sombrero and do a dance to grab the attention of the kids. And there were other teachers in the building who would take a more docile approach, the more calm and collected approach. I always thought they both had merit. They're both going to appeal to some portion of your audience as a teacher. I personally was the type that, you know, I tried to be a little bit more subdued, but there was a part of me that was always jealous of the folks who were a little bit more extroverted when it came to teaching. I felt like I missed kids that those people connected with. But I also believed in the flip side. So I wasn't entirely compelled to change my style, because I felt like I was reaching students that they might not, that they might turn off. But I love the fact that our Teaching Snow Sports Manuals validates both of those approaches. You know, I find that to be very, very welcoming. I love that the word styles in the second one is plural, because there's not just one style, you know, and what students want to achieve, you know. And I look at this poster behind me of Wayne Wong and this slow dog noodle, and like that's our roots. That's the roots of modern American skiing, is this idea of self-expression and freestyle. We pioneered that. And if you look at the curriculum materials that PSIA has put out, and then you know, after we formed AASI along with that, everything since then has had this vibe of, it's all good. Like, how can we take what you bring, whether you're teaching the lesson or taking the lesson, and make it work for you? And quite frankly, we've pioneered that in the world, you know. And I was fortunate to go to the most recent Interski in Levi, Finland, where the theme was the guest experience is everything. And I saw presentations from countries that just really surprised me. Like, for example, Germany doing a presentation on mindful skiing, like mindfulness meditation and holism. And it was like, we rolled up to that session and two of the national teamers from Germany, they're in these big, beautiful yellow suits. I mean, they're just stunning, they're super tall and beautiful skiers and bright yellow pants and jacket. And they rolled up and they're holding a sign that says mindfulness and it had the German flag on it. And the first thing they did was point at it and say, yeah, we know what you're thinking. We think it's funny too. But they bought into what we had been doing for years, which is making students the center of what we do. And so, like, not only are we nurturing these beliefs in the States, it's spreading around the world because of what we present at Interskis. So it's exciting. But you know, like back to those previous statements, it hasn't infiltrated the whole membership yet. And when I say there's work to do toward autonomy, that's what I'm talking about, is that if you look at what happens in a lot of lessons and compare that to what's available as far as curriculum, there's a disconnect there, you know, but that disconnect is opportunity, I think, for people not only to get better and more confident at the craft, but then where the rubber meets the road is to turn on more guests to the lifestyle and you know, take that 17.5% conversion rate that's a non-sustainable conversion rate in our industry and grow that. That's really what we need to be doing. So to the heart of the matter, how do we leverage curriculum standards to express ourselves as professional snow sports educators? That was the tagline that Brandon put under the title. And the answer, I believe, is right here. And I'm sure this image is familiar. And this is our learning connection. And what this learning connection represents is the job. And when the ground floor of development of this concept around 2010, the national team at that time at training looked at each other and said, what is good teaching? You know, what is good snow sports instruction? And for the last 14 years, everything you've seen come out of the national office in terms of educational materials, content, on snow presentations, has had this question as the driving force. How do we get good at the job? You know, to do right by our students and to do right by the organizations that employ us, how do we get good at this? And that's what drove this whole thing, everything you see coming out of the office now. And I think the answer to the question, how do we leverage it, is we understand and apply what's there. I don't think we have to look anywhere else but what we already have in order to do these things. I saw a chat pop up. I always thought this should be a bullseye with the triangle. Sectored ring, the student is the target. Interesting concept. I like it. And I will say, Richard, I love to play with diagrams and models. It's one of the things I did as a school teacher, like make your own, you know what I mean? Like I encourage that. And well, I taught biology and ecology, and the water cycle pops into mind. I never found one book that had a diagram of the water cycle that I really embraced. Like I liked most of this one, but I liked this thing from this one and this other thing from this other one. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make my own. And I loved it, you know, because I think it paints more of a realistic picture. So I have no problem with people manipulating diagrams and models. They're not real, they're abstract representations. So if you can change it in a way that's better for you, better for your students, do it. You know, I love it. So let's take a look, and you know, a semi deep dive into what the model means. And if you want, if anybody like toward the end of this wants to walk through the website, these are I can link right to the national website and show you where these things live on there. But I wanted to take a look at fundamentals. I wanted to take a look at our performance guides. And I want to take a look at the the scoring scale we use to determine like where somebody is in terms of developing these skills. So people skills fundamentals first. I'm not going to belabor this because I'm sure you are familiar. But what I will say about people skills fundamentals is that I believe the one highlighted is the primary. You know, and when you look at the technical fundamentals in any discipline, we always say there's no order to them. I think some people assume an order because we do have to write things down and we read top to bottom and left to right. So when people see the center of mass over base of support, there's a propensity to think of that as the most important. But in reality, the technical fundamentals in terms of performance, that's a blend. You can't take any one of those away and have maximum performance. And you can't really truly isolate one from the others. Like there's a blending. But when it comes to people skills, my belief is the one that's highlighted there is the primary. Because if we don't understand and identify and manage our own emotions, the chances of us really connecting with people in a way that we can effectively communicate in two directions and build trust, that's all minimized. You know, if you don't know what your triggers are, if you don't know what your tendencies are, if you don't know what your go-to defense mechanisms are, relating to other people just is more challenging. So I do believe that. Teaching skills fundamentals, again, I'm not going to belabor this whole thing, but because I'm sure you've seen them. But if you take a look at those and just grab one, you know, let's grab the third one down, promote play, experimentation, and exploration. That was chosen very specifically because best practices in teaching and learning indicate this is how people learn. This is the way our species learns most effectively. And if you watch young human beings do things, this is what they do. They play with stuff, they experiment. You know, sometimes it's healthy experimentation, sometimes it's not. You know, you put your hand on the hot stove and that's experimenting. And, you know, as you explore your environment, you learn lessons the hard way. But this is how our species learns. It's not through lecture. You know, but if you look at a lot of lessons on the Hill, that's what you see. So in order to become student-centered, you know, it's advisable to adopt these strategies to do that and encourage others to do so. Technical skills. So I'm going to put this on the screen, and God, don't tell Rogan because he will just have a conniption, but I made a mashup of the fundamentals across disciplines. This is not published anywhere. I'm not endorsing this as a new way. I just wanted to respect the fact that there were people on the call that probably aren't alpine skiers. So I made a mashup of our fundamentals, but they all sort of, if you look at all the fundamentals from all 5 disciplines, they sort of trend this way. There's a fundamental aspect of performance where we have to control. You can, and I don't care if you say balance or pressure. It's not a semantics argument, but we have to balance in this fore-aft plane. We have to manage pressure on the front of the gear, the back of the gear, and the middle, like purposefully. And all disciplines have a fundamental that is similar to that. Use the entire length of the gear. Doesn't matter if you're on a snowboard, tele skis, sit ski, whatever. In all disciplines, we have to control lateral pressure, you know, and in like alpine skiing, for example, that's foot to foot movement, directing pressure to the outside ski. And in snowboarding, it's directing pressure across the width of the board. But that's a truism regardless of discipline. We have to control vertical pressure. And this, in the alpine world, this is the fifth, they call the fifth fundamental. The interaction of the ski against the snow, like that interface, that's vertical pressure management. So how much are you bending and unbending your joints in the vertical plane? And that happens regardless of discipline. And then we've all got some sort of fundamental that mentions rotation of body segments in order to turn the gear, you know, and it varies from discipline to discipline. In alpine, that point of separation between the upper and lower body is at the femur heads, and in telemark it's a little higher. But the takeaway is that both disciplines have that, as does snowboarding, and it occurs in cross-country skiing and adaptive skiing as well. And we all have to control our body angles and the amount our body inclines into the turn in order to effectively edge the gear. So this is just generic fundamentals that should apply to everything, but also included within technical skills fundamentals is your understanding of technical performance in order to convey and apply accurate technical information to people. And then we all do movement analysis where we observe, evaluate, and prescribe in order to improve folks' performance. Like, that's what they pay us to do. So we've gotten through the fundamentals, and I'm just pointing them out to make more points later. But is there anything regarding any of that you would like me to address before I move on? Is that all pretty, is that pretty familiar territory? Not, and okay, good. That's what I figured. All right, but now let's instead of, and notice the language has changed. So technical skills fundamentals, I want to shift the focus to performance. And this is the actually doing it. And in order to do this, Brandon, tell me, can you see my web browser now, or do I need to change my screen share?
Yeah, I can see the PSIA website.
All right, good. So I want to show you where this comes from if you're not as familiar, because this is newer stuff, these performance guides that are published on the website for all disciplines now, and teaching and people skills. So when we talk about performance, this is what I'm specifically talking about. If you go to the national website under certification, you can click on these performance guides. Who has seen these? Thumbs up who has browsed through these performance guides. Is anybody unfamiliar with them? Okay, if you are familiar with them, I feel comfortable saying that there are a lot of folks on your staff who have never even heard of this. So you could spread the word a little bit. If you go to the national site under certification and click on performance guides, I'm just going to pick a random one. Let's pick cross country. The way these documents are laid out is in a rubric fashion. Okay. When you think about the question that prompted everything that's happening now, what makes a good snow sports instructor, that led to the development of the learning connection, this is what resulted from that question. 12 or 13 years of answering that question, this is where it arrived. And what we've developed as an association is a collection of these grids that essentially break down every aspect of the job we do on the Hill into observable components. And so when I talk about this, I like to say this, and I actually had the pleasure of saying this with him in the room. Show me your thumb up if you agree that Michael Rogan is one hell of a good ski instructor. Right. I think globally, we can agree on that. He's the coach of our Alpine team. He's been on the team since '96. People from around the world agree Rogan is an expert. What these performance guides are is if you took every datum, took every factoid from Rogan's brain regarding people skills, teaching skills, and technical skills, and wrote them down on a sheet of paper and said, this is how you can do the job really well, this would be the result. It's essentially Rogan's brain on a spreadsheet. So the beauty of that is that these, most people use these performance guides for exam prep, but that's really only one small chunk of the way they can be used. These can equally effectively be used as training tools. So if you are a supervisor or a clinic leader or a director, and you're hiring new people, and you're asking yourself the question, what do we need these folks to be good at? Open up the performance guides and look at it. If you've got folks on your staff, like say you get a complaint about somebody, you know, my instructor knew a lot about skiing, but like kind of said some things that really bothered us personally. You can open these performance guides and develop a training plan for that person to make them better at their people skills. If you've got, you know, somebody who's super nice, super hot feet, one of the best skiers on the mountain, everybody loves her, but isn't a very good teacher, you can open up that teaching skills performance guide and lay out a training plan to make that person a better teacher. And that's the real beauty of these. So as you scroll through them, what you'll see are learning outcomes. And these are observables. These are things that instructors should be able to do. These are performance aspects of the job. So regarding technical understanding and cross-country skiing, a level 1 certified cross-country ski instructor should be able to use current PSIA cross-country resources to identify and describe a skier's performance at the beginning skier level. And then to get more specific, if you want things to look for, you can dig down into these performance contributors and say, oh, well, this is something that's observable. You know, I watched this instructor describe observed body position referencing or described observed body position and referenced the appropriate and applicable joints to the movements. You know, that's an observable behavior that as a coach or in the examining world, these are the things that we look for exam candidates to do. Versus, you know, if you go to the other side, unsuccessful performance contributors, descriptions of observed body position and movements are inaccurate. If somebody says, oh, you're like, you know, the common one, you're in the back seat, but the reality of the situation is that the shoulders are over the hips and the hips are over the middle of the foot. But because that person is flexed, the butt is behind the bindings, but the chest is in front of the bindings, and that person is balanced vertically, and somebody makes the observation that they're in the back seat, it's an inaccurate statement. So you have grounds, or you have a reference document that can help you work through that. And these documents exist for technical performance. Go back to the main page here. They exist for people skills. They exist for teaching. All the disciplines, you can look up performance guides for children's instructors. You can look up performance guides in terms of freestyle, and you can look in every aspect of adaptive that we have and find a similar document that breaks down and spells out what it means to be good at the job. So that's what's packed into all this stuff. So go back to the yep, there we are. So go back to this technical skills fundamentals. And we have, like I said, similar for the other aspects of what we do. People skills perform. And I chose level 3 for this just because it's our highest level of certification. But what's expected of somebody at level 3 in terms of observable performances are these. Promote a professional environment by adapting behaviors to positively affect others. Adapting behaviors, right? Versus the concept of rigidity and chest puffery and thinking and believing that there's one right way to do this. If you really adhere to the belief that there's one right way to ski, then adaptability is probably not something in your wheelhouse. Another thing in terms of level 3 people skills performance, we expect level 3 instructors to engage in and adapt verbal and nonverbal two-way communication with all individuals. So if you know, say you've got the person who's got the loud drill instructor vibe, and you introduce that person to a, you know, a 6-year-old kid who's scared, that can really be a problem. But if that person recognizes that and says, oh, I need to back off a little bit, I'm gonna reduce my volume, I'm gonna get down on his level and welcome him in a little bit more, make that adaptability with everybody in the group, then you've got some observable skills that relate to job performance. And the last one, in terms of people skill, manage the unique motivations and emotions of each individual and the interpersonal dynamics of a group to develop trust. That's a tall order. It's a big ask, you know. But these 3 learning outcomes describe, in terms of people skills, what we believe makes good performance. And I'll just tell you, the reason the top one is in blue is because that's specifically a learning outcome that's associated with the outer blue ring in terms of instructor decisions and behaviors. And the other verbiage comes right from the people skills. So if you dig through those curriculum materials, you'll see that everything is color coded to match the appropriate triangle in the learning connection. It's just a nice touch in the documents. Teaching skill, similar. This is what we expect of a level 3 instructor in terms of performance. Creates individualized experiences, individualized learning experience to decide upon, or just to guide students toward agreed upon outcomes. Like, in other words, not imposing our beliefs or goals on people who show up, but rather work with those folks in a collaborative setting to determine what the outcome of the lesson should be. That's and doing that for each person in the group. That's a level 3 characteristic according to our curriculum. And lastly, fosters the ability to recognize, reflect upon, and assess experiences to understand basically what was learned. And then the application part means, like, when you're gone from the equation and they're not in your lesson anymore, they can still do this. You know, they've actually learned something. And we have similar structure for technical skills. And I did put Alpine on here just to not lump them all in, but, you know, technical performance for a level 3 certified instructor, essentially in a nutshell, is, can you on demand, as the environment requires, adapt your skills blend to ski safely and effectively and according to your intention. Level 3 skiing. So that's quite a chunk, and I appreciate you hanging in there. Is there anything I can address before we move on to the last bit, which is the scoring scale, which I find interesting? Can I do anything for you? You're welcome to turn your mute off and ask questions. All right. Move through this. Move through the assessment scale. And the reason I include the assessment scale is because it encourages autonomy. You know, you go back to the original title, and the intention of this presentation is, how can we become fully autonomous instructors in the craft? And this scoring scale was chosen from the world of psychology. 2 scientists in the late 60s, Fitz and Posner, developed this scale of skill acquisition. And it's become a standard, and, you know, over the last 40 or so years, in measuring objectively skill acquisition. And if you've taken an exam in the last several years, I'm sure you've seen this. What's important to understand, I think, is that when you look at the scoring scale from 1 to 6, there are 2 components at each tier. There's a performance component, like, is the performance happening? Yes or no? And then there's a frequency component, how much? So, like, put on my examiner hat for a minute. If I'm scoring, say, a level 3 exam, level 3 Alpine exam, and I'm watching, let's say, performance short turns. In order to be in the passing range, I need to see more than half of those short turns have accurate blending of all 5 fundamentals. So I count as I'm watching the run, count the turns that are, either turns that don't display it or turns that do, and then do a little bit of math at the end so I can come up with an objective score to put on that scorecard. I'll show you how that breakdown works a little bit more, in depth. You can take the Fitz and Posner scale and break it in half and look at it as a binary scale and say, well, anything below this performance and frequency does not meet the standard. Anything above this performance and frequency does meet the standard. So you can break that into a binary scale and get more specific from there and say, okay, how much? Were 51% of the turns parallel, 65% of the turns, or 95% of the turns? And that helps us determine, is it a 4, a 5, or a 6 on the scorecard versus none of those turns were parallel, which would be a 1. Maybe 15% of the turns were parallel. That might be a 2. And maybe, 25% of the turns were parallel. So there's an objectivity to using this as a scoring tool. And one further way you can break it down is by zones of skill acquisition. And we say someone is in the cognitive zone of skill acquisition if they still have to think about it. Folks will come up to as an example, folks will roll up in an exam and we'll say, okay, we're going to do pain in the S. And you'll inevitably hear from somebody like, what's pain in the S? So if you're learning it on the spot and it's not happening, clearly in a cognitive level or a cognitive zone of skill acquisition, and we see it all the time when we ask people questions. I'd ask kids questions in school and the tongue would come out one side of the mouth and their eyes would go up to one corner of the room. And that's what somebody looks like when they're thinking about it versus somebody who can answer like that without even giving it a thought, in two different zones of skill acquisition, all the way up through autonomy. So the reason this is relevant here and the reason I bring it up is because we're looking at self-expression and being in the autonomous zone with our craft in order to express ourselves as teachers. Right? So the point is, you can use our curriculum materials to develop this. Everything that we've created over the past 14, 15 years is with this in mind. Getting us as good as we can get at this job so that we can deliver the best product possible to the people who are paying us to do it. That's it in a nutshell. And that brings us back to this question, which is similar to the question you answered a bit ago. And what I'm hoping is we can get a little bit of dialogue going about the topic. And then I would be happy to tell you what I think if you're interested. So at this point, feel free to use the chat. Feel free to ask questions, make comments. We can do a little bit of Q&A and then wrap it up. I do appreciate your attention. I know it was lecture-y. It was not based on play, experimentation, or exploration. So I violated my best practices that I told you were so good, but I promise you if we do a clinic on the Hill, I will apply those teaching tools to make you have an enjoyable day, whether you want to or not. What can we talk about?
So when I think of the rights of a student and a teacher together, I think of two things. I think they should have the right to a safe environment, and I think they should have the right to input into the lesson plan.
I love that, Mike. I agree. Keith, just the devil's advocate, do you see lessons in your experience where people don't work like collaboratively with their students to develop a common goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen that, right? And I think that comes a lot with inexperience because they've got the they've got the lesson that they know how to teach, right? And they're like, well, I'm going to give this to you one way or the other. Or I'm sure if you guys as examiners see they've brought this perfect progression and they're going to, it doesn't matter what fundamental you give them, man, they're bringing that. They're going to show you that one thing. And I think just takes time, just takes experience.
I fully agree, bud. And I make a joke, like when I talk about being my experience as a school teacher, like I only half joke that it wasn't until year 4 that I realized there were kids in the room. But that's true. And as I talk to other teachers about their development as professionals, it seems to be pretty common. Like I was so concerned about content and so concerned about the format of my lesson, because I had to submit lesson plans, that it didn't really dawn on me to work collaboratively with the kids. But as I got better, as I, practiced and had more years of experience, I started to throw some of those lesson plans out the window. You make a decision, back to that statement about morality at the beginning of the presentation. I was confident enough in myself and had enough respect for those kids to say, I don't really care what the lesson plan reads. The best thing to do right now is go in this direction.
Mhm.
I don't think that happens as often for new teachers, and it totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it's a natural development of teachers. Thanks for that, bud. Tank, what do you got?
Yeah, I think we all got to start out with safety. And I think it's got to be enjoyable. I don't want to spend any time out there that's not enjoyable. I mean, we've all had terrible lessons. And those are the ones that I relive as far what could I have done different? How could I have approached it in a more successful fashion? But if they don't enjoy the time that they spend with us, they're not coming back. The kid doesn't want to come to ski school again. The adult doesn't want to book you again. There's got to be a shared experience, and that's coming without I'm going to feed you this. It comes with, what, let me take it in a different direction. Let me react to what's going on. So and it's not all about, I want to ski. Well, we want to ski in the trees, it isn't about giving them what they think they want necessarily. It's about giving them an experience that they're going to look back on and say, wow, that was a hell of a lesson. I enjoyed my time with Keith. I'm trying to give you some kudos there, Keith.
I'm enjoying my time with Keith, I think, actually.
So,
Thank you, Tink. Thank you.
Hey, Tink, do you know what?
There's got to be content that's legitimate, that they say, wow, this he knows what he's talking about. I can buy into trying that. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox.
Well, and I think that leads to trust, right? You have to know what you're talking about. Because if the stuff you're trying doesn't work, like if you don't have a plan B, or if it's not grounded in something that's objective, like it can fall apart pretty quickly. Tank, do you know what a word wall is? Tank, have you ever seen one of those? It's like
God, I've seen more word walls that I want to choke on.
Have you seen the presentation from anybody in the national office that shows the word wall? And this came from a guest survey. We sent this survey out to NSAA sent it out to people across the country who had taken a lesson at a resort. And they asked the questions and they built these word walls from the responses. And when they asked people what was the best part of your lesson, the word that received the most hits and then was the largest on the word wall? You know what that word was? It was instructor.
Keith or my name, I think.
You're right. It was instructor. And it said in parentheses, Keith. It said instructor. That was the best thing in my lesson. But do you know when they answered the question, what was the worst part of your lesson? Do you know what word appeared the biggest on that word wall? Instructor. So it indicates the power that we have as teachers. Like we are going to make or break that person's experience, you know. And you can have the hottest feet in the world, but if you don't connect with the people in front of you, they're not going to have a good time. And the contrary, that is true too. If you, I'll bet you $1 if you asked every single ski school director in the Eastern United States to name their best instructor, I would venture a big wager that 95% of those people named would not be level 3s. They wouldn't be examiners. They might be non-certified. It would be the person on staff that connects with those folks because it's so important. But then when I hear that in my position, I always say, well, just think how good that person would be if they knew all this stuff in these performance guides. You know, like, I just think it would make that great person even better because of how they developed and what's contained in there. You know, thanks, Ting.
You know, Angelo, I don't disagree with all you're saying there. I think, you know, and I think probably the people who are on this call are representative of people who have different styles of teaching, different approaches, vary that approach, understand clients, and they have a good amount of legitimate content that they can bring to the lesson. My problem is we have over 300 instructors at Okemo, and and there's a lot of them that have really poor content. And we don't have enough time to spend with them to educate them, even though we're spending more money and more time on that at Okemo than we ever have before. So I think it's it's problematic.
I see the same thing at my home resort, but like I fully agree. I totally 100% support it.
And I'd like everybody to buy into being a better instructor, but we've got a lot of pulls on our time. I'm a part-time instructor, so I work 7 days a week. Because I got a job, I do 5 days a week.
Right.
I take a week of my vacation to teach because of the requirements, and then I have my 2 days a year that I do the bare minimum. I actually do more than that, but that I spend going to a PSIA event, and boy, I'd like to do more, but at some point there needs to be some fulfillment of my own personal joy of skiing. There's a real time drag here, so I don't know how to fix that.
I don't know. I have the same concerns about our new staff, and when I say new, I mean like I'm thinking over the last 4 or 5 years, the amount of training I received in my first 4 or 5 years leaps and bounds more than what our people now have received, just because of the structure of the industry. And I worry, as the prices of lessons go up, I really worry about the quality of the product. And then just from the human side of it, I see these folks coming to our resort paying a lot of money for a lesson, and seeing that product and knowing in my heart that it's not worth what those people paid. It's a shame because of what they paid. It's a shame because of the safety aspect of it and just the enjoyment piece of it. But yeah, I think the industry is feeling that exactly what you're saying right now across the board. That's what I see.
Well, I think Vail Resorts, they're going to reduce the cost of lessons next year.
What else, gang?
I know one thing I've been stewing on a bit as far as the rights and duties of the teacher go is, it's identifying, I guess the desired outcomes and the intent of our students. And this has come from some of my own personal experiences. And an example, I think I kind of brought this up the last talk, but I've been playing a lot with kind of more reboundy type turns, loading a ski and getting it kind of off the ground in transition or light. I think a lot of people probably seen like those videos of Benny Walsh going around, and that's to the extreme end of things. But I came down the run and I was really playing around trying to get some kind of like high energy, reboundy type turns. And I get to the bottom and somebody I was skiing with goes, "Well, that was good, but can you keep your skis on the ground?" And when you look through the lens of the learning connection, right? Like that was kind of were we like, was that a moment that built trust as far as accepting feedback from that person? Was that, a moment that showed collaboration on long-term goals and short-term objectives? Was that a moment, that, just there's a two-way communication going on? Right. And I think that's important for us as instructors, because sometimes I think we get this idea of what is good skiing in our heads and forget about what our students' ideas of good skiing or what they're trying to accomplish when they get out in snow are.
I've worked with groups in events that come from resorts where they're provided a script for their beginner lesson. A script that they are required to follow. A script, And I think sometimes the solutions to fixing that terrible 17.5% return rate that we have, the solutions are so simple, and like Matt Boyd's a master of the obvious. Like, and I mean that in a very positive way. Like, I heard Matt give a lecture one time, and he said, kid walks out of the rental shop with gear, never skied before, and he said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And the kid's like, "I want to jump." So Matt said, "Put your skis on." Flicked them on. He said, "Jump." The kid jumped, that high. All right, you jumped. High five. The kid felt success right out of the gate. Right out of the gate. And Tink, when you were talking about skiing the trees, I think sometimes, we hear those things from guests, and you watch them ski and you're like, "Oh my God, if I take this guy in the trees, he's going to kill himself." But skiing the trees doesn't mean going to your steepest blade pitch and throwing caution to the wind right down the middle. Maybe it just means taking them down the beginner trail and skiing around one tree. And then maybe the next time, 2 trees. And then maybe you do a little slalom around 3 trees. And guess what? That person has skied the trees. But if you don't, and then you celebrate. But if you don't take the time to consider, like, my perspective of steeps is probably very, very different from some person's perspective on steeps that only skis 3 days a year. Like, they think the beginner run is steep. So like, I want to get better on steeps, and our brain we might have a tendency to go, well, that means a double black diamond. Well, no, steep to them might mean that pitch on that green run. But if we don't take the time to figure out where they're coming from and work with them on that goal, like we might make some assumptions and deliver our lesson instead of theirs. That's a problem. Keith, to your point, like, here's my progression. And in exams we see that, like, we 16 inches of new snow at a level 2 exam, and the fella shows up who is determined to teach pivot slips, no matter what. Good luck. But that, I think you made the point. It comes from just not having much understanding, much skill, much experience, but I put this screen share up there. What do I think the rights and duties of teachers and students are? I think of it as a duty of certified members of our organization to understand what's in those performance guides and try to do that. And not for an ego pump, but because I know what's in there and who put it in there, and I know how good it is. And I know how much better it would make the student's experience, and I know how much easier it would make that instructor's life. You know, because have you seen, I'm sure you've seen, or you've heard, and I've done it myself. Like, I'm not sitting here pointing fingers. I've taught terrible lessons. You know, I've taught some good ones. I'm not ashamed to say it, but I've taught some bad ones too. But how many times have you heard an instructor blame the student for not being able to perform? You know, versus a more flexible, experienced, rounded instructor with depth will say, oh man, that's too much for that guy right now. So let's back off of that. Hey man, try this instead. Like, you'll have success here, and then we'll build. Next time you come back, this is where we'll take it. But if you don't have that, you know, as your wheelhouse, it's pretty easy. That guy was so uncoordinated. Well, that may not have been it at all. You know? So I think it's a duty. Like, if you're a certified professional and you wear a pin that says professional, I think a duty of ours is to really understand the curriculum and deliver, you know. And I think it is a right of teachers, I believe this, to be compensated for their skill at an appropriate professional level. I think that's a right, you know. And you flip that around, it's the right of a student to receive a product that's worth what they paid. But I also believe it's the duty of a learner to make effort to learn what the instructor, the coach, or the teacher is putting in front of them, because that's what they're there for, and that's what we're there for. And I firmly believe there's enough in those performance guides, and there's enough in our fundamentals to satisfy any ski teacher on this planet. Because if you take somebody like a Rogan or a Jeb Boyd, you know, anybody, name anybody from our team, and you ask them what they're working on, 0% of them are going to say, oh, I'm not working on anything. I'm good at all this. And 100% of them are going to name something that's in that performance guide. You know, and if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for anybody. And I believe that. That's why I presented what I presented to you tonight. I appreciate you paying attention to it. And here's just a little summary. Like, we've got work to do. There's plenty of bad ski teaching and snowboard teaching out there. There's work to be done. And I know, Tink, what you're saying. Like, people on this call, we have a biased crew here. You guys are a skewed audience, or you wouldn't be on here. You invest. You have a level of investment. I totally get that. So it's us and folks like us who need to lift the rest of the crew. You know, engage them, get them to trust us by understanding ourselves, communicating with them effectively. When we take them out in clinics, make them fun, make them experimental, try this and that. Which one works better? Get them engaged. Explore. Have you ever been over there on that side of the mountain? No. Hey, try it in the sun, and they'll try it in the shade. Let's see if it still works. Like, engage them. You know what I mean? Nurture and regulate our self-expression. But nurture means don't hide it. And back to the snow sports, the teaching snow sports manual, like, figure out what your voice is as a teacher and put it out there in the world. Be proud of it. If you're the loud, rambunctious type of teacher, embrace it, you know? But if somebody shows up who that scares the hell out of them, maybe back off of that. If you're like me, I'm a little more on the subdued side, and sometimes I know I bore the hell out of people. I need to crank it up a little bit. But we have to nurture what we've got, but regulate it when appropriate. We have rights and responsibilities. PSIA-AASI has historically encouraged autonomy and self-expression. So I would encourage you and ask you all, when you hear people say things like, I don't believe in what they do, they want you to ski this way, that is just not true. You can flip through the first 3 pages of any one of our manuals and read things like those quotes I put up at the beginning that encourage people to express themselves and say things like styles, plural, movement patterns, plural, meeting people where they are. So I'm enlisting your help in spreading that good word, because we just need more people to spread it. I think our materials encourage and provide guidance for developing autonomous pros. I believe that. And I think understanding and using our materials and the learning connection concept will create autonomy in both teaching and learning on both ends of that spectrum, whether you're giving the clinic or you're in it, taking it. That's all I have.